What's up, guys? Welcome back to Games on Deck, and it's time to take a look at the First Descendant. I've put about 6 or 7 hours in this game and have been playing it a lot on the handheld, so I figured it's time to get the video out there on some performance here and what we're looking at. I'm not going to go too crazy, but I think you'll learn enough from this to see how the game's going to run and if you want to play it. Now, as far as the settings for the Steam Deck, which is where we're going to start, I am on low here. No FSR right now, but we'll talk about that later along with frame gen. You might want to up your anti-aliasing a little bit. For the purposes of this video, I'll leave it at that low preset, but just be aware of that. And then I have motion blur turned off as usual for me there. And then we're going to be 800p 1610 for our ratio there on that. Now, getting into like the first hub in Albion here, you're going to be around 30 FPS, but it's certainly going to have its times where it's going to dip down. We're very resource heavy in this game. It's not easy to run both CPU and GPU side, which is why things like FSR don't necessarily help us a whole lot in this game, which we'll go over too. And you'll see some weird jankiness in some areas where like his body or the model will go like very low frame even when the rest of the things are running well, and then it'll recover. You'll see some oddities in the game for sure. Definitely need some updates that I think will help a lot of that. But yeah, performance is going to kind of vary all over the place depending on where you're at. We do have FSR and XES and all that in here, but FSR is like FSR 1 or something. It's not great, and even on quality, when you get out in the world where there's like trees and grass and motion and stuff, it gets pretty rough. We jump up to performance here. Yeah, we see an increase in FPS right here in this spot, but a lot of other areas of the game, especially when it's busy, you don't notice much difference, but you certainly see the image quality. Now, XeSS I'm a big fan of even on the deck, but it's so CPU intensive that it doesn't really help the game, especially later when there's a lot happening. So I've kind of shied away from that as well. I kind of think that unless you're messing with some frame gen, just going native on this winds up working the best, at least for now, until we see some updates in the game. This is really just launch in early days as this thing comes out of beta. Now, getting into playing, there's all kinds of areas that you're going to run into: open world, indoor, in groups, solo, all of that. And performance is certainly going to vary. And on the Steam Deck with this setup, I've been getting anywhere from 25 to 40 25 to 45 FPS depending on where I'm at, depending on what's going on, and you can't really squeeze a lot more out of it. FSR will gain you a couple FPS here and there out in the real world, but again, image quality is just going to be kind of another thing that you might have to address there. But ultimately, I mean, it's playable. I was able to play quite a couple 2-3 hours on the Steam Deck, but it can get rough. And I did a public group for one of the like instances that you can go into to see how that would run, and it was pretty good, very similar to what the open world experience was like. I wanted to see, like, with a full group running around together, how it would handle that. And it's basically the same kind of performance, anywhere from 25 to 40-ish FPS, completely depending on what's going on there for that. But, like, if this is playable for you or not is completely going to be subjective, and a lot of people, I'm sure, will jump into it. Other people won't be so interested at the lower FPS, but I haven't had any major issues other than that. Now, there is frame gen that you can kick on, which uses FSR again. I have it on quality there, and you will have to manually do your GPU clock to 1600 in order to kind of stabilize it. Still a mess in my opinion on SteamOS. Frame gen just it's not been the best experience, but it is here in the game, and if you want to mess with it, it can help you out in some areas. But you will notice that it's on from image quality to latency, and yeah, it might not always gain you a lot. Here I'm running about 10 FPS to 15 FPS higher than I would be normally. Now, we also have cloud gaming, so if you happen to have a really good internet connection like I do here, and you guys know I love GeForce Now here, it runs this game fantastically. I'm full ultra 800p native here, 60 FPS locked in, and that's because the browser locks at 60 still. If we could get a native app on Linux, we could actually get up to the 90 FPS on the OLED, which would be nice. But either way, nice solid 60 FPS. Latency feels great. GeForce Now, always a good experience for me. So if that's something you like to use, you can save battery power and get a really good experience there for that. Alright guys, we're going to wrap it up there. The First Descendant here on Steam Deck. Again, it is subjective of how playable it is, but I haven't had any major issues with it. Cloud is certainly an option, as is messing around with some frame gen, FSR, and other things. Alright guys, thanks a lot for coming to check out the video as always. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.